Well, this evening I have the pleasure of being joined by another Paul, Mr. Paul Watson, and we're talking about your wonderful book, England's Dark Dreaming. I'm just trying to pick it up off the floor. I dropped it on the floor. Dropped it off the floor. There we go. Which is just filled to the brim with amazing artwork, and I'd been waiting for this one, from the moment I found out about it, so I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And the day I got it, I just sort of devoured the whole thing and just went through read everything, and then sat down and just analysed all the pictures and things, because they're just so interesting and unique, and I continually find little bits that I didn't necessarily notice the first time round. So, did the concept of the book come about because of Hookland, or is it a concept that you had before? I mean,
I'd been working with myths and folklore since before I discovered Hookland. I went across the county boundary sometime after that, and actually I think it was through posting some of my earlier photographic work that David Southwell and I met on Twitter and started talking about our mutual interest in England, in folklore and myth, and how it all wraps together.
I sort of stumbled upon Hookland and David just sort of accidentally. I don't even know how I sort of stumbled upon it. It was just sort of there, and through that, I've met the most amazingly creative people who have the same sort of disjointed. I guess disjointed is the way of saying it. Worldview almost. It's like looking at the world. I liken it looking at through the world through a broken piece of glass. One of the biggest compliments I had recently was that someone said, it's nice to meet you because you think differently, and one of the things that really hooked me about your artwork is that it's like you're thinking differently. You're seeing things differently.
Yeah, there's certainly an abstract, an element of the dreamscape in there. It's England through a glass darkly, and sort of mixing in all of the myths and legends of England, some of them, but using them to tell a slightly non-narrative tale of where we are now.
There were some pieces that really struck me, really, really powerful pieces in the book, and I know that a lot of them are very thematic. So over several the several drawings and so forth that tell a story, but there were certain ones that really hit me, and I'd like to talk about those quickly, because ultimately we want people to really get this book and look at it and absorb it. But so I'd like to start off with the Green Man 2, if we can. And this really struck me because of everyone knows the tales of the Green Man, or they know of his presence, whether it be from the name of a pub or what really struck me about this one was the Green Man enthroned, sitting down, just sort of staring out. And what got me is I thought, what is he thinking? What would he be thinking, sitting there in his throne, looking out at his England right now? What is it that? And I looked into his eyes, and I just thought, I would think his heart is breaking.
he sort of appears, I think, in 3 drawings towards the end of the series.
Yeah.
So, there's one, he appears holding a staff, appearing quite powerful. Then there's a second one in which he's the procession. There's a series of procession drawings throughout the series. I forgot mini-series within the series. And then, yes, the Green Lantern is seated and throned somewhat towards the end of the series, and there is no winning and losing in this series. It's not a hero's journey which ends with the hero winning or the hero losing. It's quite open-ended, so there's a certain ambiguity to what he might be thinking. But yes, certainly he is a reference to nature within England.
And that sort of brings me on to, and you touched on it, is the Procession Part 3, which I found a much more hopeful drawing. It was what I saw in the Procession Part 2 is, there's the May Queen and there's the Green Man, the sacred female and the sacred male. It felt like, the goddess of all creation and the god of all creation, and looking, they're looking to the side. It's like they're looking with hope out into the future, and it's just a wonderful pairing. And in the background, and I don't know if it's intentional, but this was the one of the bits that struck me. But in the background of this, and it's probably just my eyes playing tricks, but I can see in the sort of the V shape between the two, it's almost like there's a foreboding face looking out at them. There is something watching that's dark and ominous, but in the foreground we have this hopeful, beautiful scene of them just sort of looking out to the future.
There are certainly indications of figures in the background in a few of these, and I think the first clear one I did was probably in Procession Part 1. There's a horned figure which is actually wearing the antler headdress which was recovered from Starkar. So sort of bringing in some English history, ancient history, which appears in a few of the drawings. But I felt this procession going through the entire series. There's 3 procession drawings, and yes, it starts off quite bleak, but becomes towards the end a little more hopeful, a little more strident, and hopefully leading towards a better conclusion. But we don't know, because the actual conclusion of this whole story is yet to happen.
This one, the reason that it really struck me is it reminded me of the Venus of Willendorf. That has always been a really powerful sacred feminine image for me, as for many people, and that's the first thing that struck me, and it also made me think of my own wife, and because we've just had a child. She's 10 or 11 weeks old now, and that bringing in of the new life and the femininity and the beauty of that, and I guess what struck me is in the Venus of Willendorf, you don't see a face; it's covered in hair, and that's what I saw in this as well. You don't see her face, and she's holding a sickle. She's in the cornfield. She's harvesting. She's bringing in that nourishment. And for me, it was just a very powerful fertility drawing for me, and that's what really struck me. And I look at it, and I just feel that beauty really that sort of surrounds it.
It's interesting because in some ways we've got fertility symbols in, so for example, Mayqueen being the blessing of the fields and so on. And this one derives, the ritual part 3 derives more from it's an earlier drawing called Coming to the Corn, which was partially inspired by a song by The Hare and the Moon, a spook folk band. And actually that figure is also carrying the same sickle. It's almost out of sight at the edge of the picture.
Yeah.
So you come in with the sickle, and it's almost it's connected with fertility, but then it's the obverse side of the coin. And you then have the harvest, and the harvest is cutting down. But it's necessary for the other.
Yeah, exactly. And it felt like this. The harvest is the end of that cycle, and it's and it's necessary for the nourishment and the regrowth and the and I just think it's just a wonderful picture. It's one that I want to talk to you actually about getting a bigger version of it, because I'd really like it to frame it and get it in my studio when I finish it.
The original drawings are 1 meter high, so
wow,
life size, give or take a bit. So one day I'll maybe exhibit them all, and it's quite strange. This is my studio, and when I was doing them, I often had an easel set up behind me, and then 2 or 3 partially finished ones hanging from various locations, keep them away from cats. And you're sitting here surrounded by these pretty much life-size figures, which is quite strange. But yes, I'd really like to show them sometime, because in full size they are different again.
So which brings me on to the last one that I want to speak about. And this is interestingly placed, and something that anyone who follows me on Twitter will know is something dear to my heart, and I think to yours and to David's and so many people. When we talk about folklore against fascism and things like that, and so we're talking about the glorification of ignorance, really, which the title, and it's just it's self-explanatory in what it is. This angry fellow, I'm just looking at it draped in his ceremonial Union flag, and behind him is almost I want to say sort of a Luciferian type figure who's egging him on, and this guy is just reveling in his ignorance and his racism and his xenophobia, and proud to be this fascist figure.
That was probably the hardest one to draw, because the hatred is probably the most explicit.
Yeah.
And, shouting wrapped in, as you say, this tattered old Union flag. Some of the ideas that came for it were from actually comic book sources. Actually, not the zombie ones, but there were some early issues of Hellblazer.
Right.
With I think one with a couple of racist skinheads who get merged into one body by a demon. Things like that were all sort of piling in, plus obviously the news you see every day, and all sorts of influences coming into that. But yes, that was certainly probably the most graphic of the drawings.
Although the artwork is, as I said, grim and earthy and dark, but ultimately I see a real hopefulness and beauty in a lot of it. But also the questions and the subject matter is being brought up, the hard questions, and I think art has to do that. It can't just deal with flowers and unicorns, and without going into much detail, I really love the way that you've left the very last piece of work. The last bit of artwork is almost leaving everything on a question mark and just saying, okay, well, we're at that point. What are we going to do with this?
Yes, it's the series of 24 drawings that have set out the facts, bits of the suggestions, and hand it over to the viewer at the end of it.
Yeah. And I just think it's worth every penny. I really I want people to get it and view these, just and sit down and think about them, because I think too often people think about folklore and this world as just a storytelling medium, but there's so much more to it. And what you've done is you've told what I see as several amazing stories in this beautiful artwork, and I hope that more people will actually take the time to get it and read it, because it really blew me away. It really did. Yeah. So thank you so much for giving us your time, because I know that you've got plenty of things on, and we've been trying to do this for a while, and I've only sort of recently got around to it. But thank you so much for giving me your time, and it really is a wonderful book.
Thank you very much.
And where can people get it? They can get it directly from you, can't they? Get it from your website.
They can get it directly from my website, and I've now also got one bookshop in London stocking at Hedgerow Books. They're stocking it in their shop in Finsbury area of London.
And thank goodness you're not selling it through Amazon. That's all I can say. Amazon and I...
No, it's not about...
Amazon and I don't see eye to eye on anything.